Thank you, Charles. And let me, before I introduce our speaker, let me say congratulations to Charles Morris, to Charles Hill Morris, to Mike Trainer, the whole team that put this together. This is something that we desperately need here in the city of Savannah. This will be terrific, not only for the city, but for the entire South, and I want to congratulate them on putting this together. Well, as many of you know, this month marks the 289th anniversary of the founding of Georgia. The founder of the colony, James Edward Oglethorpe, was a visionary leader who had a dream for a better world, free from the ills of modern society. And like James Edward Oglethorpe, today's first speaker is a visionary leader who has worked over the course of a distinguished 36-year career in public service to create a better Georgia. Michael L. Thurmond was born in Athens, Georgia, the descendant of slaves and the son of a sharecropper. An attorney by profession, Mike launched his political career in 1986 when he became the first African-American elected to the General Assembly from Clark County since Reconstruction. From there, he went on to serve as a director of division of Family of Children Services, 3 terms as state labor commissioner, the first black Georgian ever to win statewide office, interim superintendent of the DeKalb County Schools, Democratic Party nominee for the U.S. Senate in 2010, and since 2017 as CEO of DeKalb County, Georgia. In addition to being a skillful and visionary political and civic leader, Mike is also an accomplished lecturer and author. He has a passion for history. He served 4 terms on the board of the Georgia Historical Society, during which time he helped our institution to tell the full story of our state and nation's past. Over the years, he and I have collaborated on many projects, and he has been especially instrumental in expanding the Georgia Historical Society's Historical Marker Program. Mike has a special talent for reaching across political and racial divides and bringing people together to accomplish great things. And I cannot think of anyone better suited to kick off this inaugural forum on leadership than the man you're about to hear. Please join me now in giving a warm welcome to the CEO of DeKalb County and my friend, the Honorable Michael Thurmond.
Good morning. First, let me thank my friend Todd Gross for the kind words of introduction, his friendship, and most importantly, for democratizing the history of our state. He's been a phenomenal leader of the Historical Society and a phenomenal Georgian. So let's give him a round of applause. Thank you so much, Todd. To Mr. Morris and the Morris family and all of those who embrace this vision to bring leaders together to discuss how we can better serve the people who bestowed us with this unique privilege. Mr. Morris, this is a brilliant idea, and you honor me with the invitation to come here to the first coast, to the first city of Georgia, to participate in this event. So a round of applause for the Morris family. Thank you so much, Mr. Morris. And to my friend, your mayor, Mayor Johnson, just 2 weeks ago, he was one of 100 Georgians who were honored in Atlanta as being one of the 100 most influential leaders, people in our state. I've watched his career grow and develop, and you all are truly blessed to have this young man as the leader of this very important city in this region. A round of applause for Mayor Johnson. Mr. Mayor. Now, many have stated, and some have researched the idea as to how great leaders are forged. Much has been written, and people much smarter than myself have gone about the research and the analysis as to what makes a successful leader. And we all have our definitions. And so if you will indulge me, I will ask you the question. What are some of the characteristics of a successful leader? Who can give me one characteristic of what you believe a successful leader must possess? One characteristic. Who will volunteer? Yes, ma'am.
How about integrity?
Integrity, great. Give her a hand. That's wonderful. But do me one favor. Would you stand and identify yourself and then repeat your answer for us?
Oh, I
Oh, yeah, that's a part of the deal. Tell me of your leadership position.
I am the president of the Springfield Legacy Foundation, and we are bringing together the history of the land, of course, the people, and the environment. And I believe integrity is the core of any great leadership.
Absolutely. Give her another round of applause. You must have integrity. That's how you generate respect, by not when the cameras are rolling, by the way. Integrity is defined when the bright lights are not shining, is how you comport yourself when you and maybe no one else actually sees you make decisions. Another hand, one more characteristic. Yes, ma'am. Responsibility. Why responsibility? Thank you. Wonderful answer. Thank you. Give her another round of applause. You know, people say, well, and I know the mayor understands this, and I see my colleague sitting there, Mr. Steve Bradshaw, who is a native of Savannah, but he's also a commissioner and the former presiding officer for the DeKalb County Board of Commissioners, Mr. Steve Bradshaw. Stand up, Steve. Give him a hand. He is a native of Savannah, my colleague from DeKalb County. People say, well, how much power do you have? And I said, I don't have any power, but I have a tremendous amount of responsibility. And we often confuse, quote, power, but it's really not power, but it's responsibility. And you have to accept it. The next answer, one more trait of a successful leader. Yes, sir. Courage. Stand up, I like that. What's your name? Courage. Courage. Well, actually, this is my former law clerk, Mr. Curtis Singleton. I met him when he was a student at the University of Georgia way back in the 20th century. Well, stand up again. Give him a hand. Give Curtis Singleton a round of applause. Yep. Courage. Courage to do the right thing. And oftentimes, doing the right thing is not necessarily what? The most what? Popular thing. Courage. All three are great answers. But let me tell you and share with you what I believe the most important talent characteristic a successful leader must have. You must have courage. You must have integrity. You must accept responsibility. You must be able to, I suppose, articulate in audiences, real and virtual. But I believe the most important talent is the ability to listen. Listening. Active listening. And it's not just listening to the people who believe as you believe, or the people who vote as you vote, or the people who attend the same church, mosque, or synagogue, or temple that you attend, but listening, proactive listening, requires you to listen even to those you disagree with. One of the things I've learned in politics over the years is that it's easy to listen to the people who make the contributions and the people who go out and put your signs in the yard and the people who say they voted for you. It's easy to listen to those people, Commissioner. But guess what? When you assume the mantle of leadership, the people who generally talk to you the most are not those who supported you, but it's the ones who what? Oppose you. And once you become a Chatham County Commissioner or a mayor, you are saying that I'm going to listen and serve not just the people who supported me, but now I'm here to serve all the community. Now, oftentimes, it's easy to listen to those who are telling you all the good things that you like to hear. It's easy to listen to those who have the exact same position. If you're a Republican, it's great to sit down with other Republicans, like-minded Republicans, and to have political discussions, or if you're a Democrat or independent. But in truth, if that is the sum total of your listening, then literally you're living in an echo chamber. Leadership requires something else. And by the way, what's the biggest risk you face if you listen to people who have beliefs different from yours? What's the biggest risk? I'm coming down, you know, I'm a Baptist, so I'm a Baptist, you know, I like to walk. So what's the biggest challenge you face if you find yourself listening to someone who may have ideas, beliefs different than the ones that you possess? Come on, Commissioner, what's the biggest risk?
You might learn something that you had not considered before.
You might learn something. That's a major threat, isn't it? You might learn something. You might also define or determine that what I thought was true is what? And I submit to you, now I hadn't talked to Mr. Morris in detail, but I can tell you that one of the most important things that we can gain from this conference is that we learn to listen. And the other thing about listening, because most of the time when you're talking to someone, particularly someone you may agree or disagree with, are you really listening or are you really thinking how you're going to respond? And a talent that has served me well is to listen so intently that you can hear things that are not being said. Listening actively to others, listening and learning, because that's what politicians do, right? What do you think polling is all about? Millions and millions and millions of dollars are spent doing what? Polling as to how voters and people think. Corporate America polls consumers, polling, and all that is a very 21st century way of what? Listening. In order to listen, they have to develop some comfort in doing it. And the first thing I want to share with you, second thing is, in order to listen, you have to see it as being in your best interest to hear what's being said. Now, we're all self-interested, aren't we? Nothing wrong with, is it? Most people are most interested, number one, about themselves, about their families, about where their children might attend school, about safety in their community. That's self-interest. All people are self-interested. Generally, people find themselves self-interested with like-minded people. That's why oftentimes, not all the time, but the majority of the time, if you are a conservative white Republican, who are most of the people you hang out with? Conservative white Republican. Is that true? If you are a progressive, liberal, black Democrat, who are most of the time you hanging out with? Progressive black Democrats. Does that make you a racist or does it just make you human? It make you a human being, right? I'm the same way. I've tried to, grow and expand, but I like to hang out with people who are like me. Most of my friends are like me. Most of my friends are short people. I've tried to expand to have some tall friends. But it's just something about tall people. It's just like they always looking down on me. So I don't know, but I try. I try, Mr. Mayor, right? But you gotta be able to understand self-interest, and nothing wrong with being self-interested, but you have to elevate your self-interest, and it's something I call enlightened self-interest, right? That was this French philosopher, and I hope I can, Alexis de Tocqueville came to America in the late 1800s, and he was looking at America, and he said, you know, Americans understand how this whole concept of enlightened self-interest. Whereas if I help you, what I'm really doing is helping myself. Enlightened self-interest. How many of the people in this room were born and raised, went to the high school, graduated, where you actually living right now? How many people who are living in Savannah, Georgia, was born and raised, went to high school in Savannah? How many who are living in Savannah right now, born, raised, and actually went to high school in some other county, some other state? Look around. The majority of the people were educated with somebody else's tax dollars. Right? Who prepared you to go out and be very successful leaders, and now you are taking the return on that investment and using it in a county, in a state far from where you were born and raised. But enlightened self-interest helps me to understand why that's a good investment. It doesn't matter whether your child is in a public school or a private school. It doesn't matter whether all your kids and grandkids have already graduated from the schools here in Chatham County. Enlightened self-interest helps me recognize that, you know what, it's in my best interest to make sure that other people's children who I've never met, who live on the other side of the county, graduate from high school. Why? Because if you're a business person, you want consumers, am I right? If you're an employer, you want skilled, trained, educated folk to come and work for you, am I right? Well, guess where 90% of your future workforce is right now this morning? They're sitting in a classroom somewhere in a public school and 10% in private school. So if I want to be in business in 5 and 10 and 15 years, if I want consumers, if I want employees, then I'm interested in the public schools in Chatham County. Expand your comfort zone, you can get it. We're comfortable. And I was at my high school this past week, and I talked to them. Where are my educators? Any educators? Any public educators? Any school? Where my teachers? Stand up, all my educators. I want them to stand up. Let's give them a hand, because give our educators a round of applause. Thank you. Young people make up 20% of the population, 100% of our future. Right? And go into any school. You know, when I was growing up, things were kind of simple when I finally got to Clark Central. I've been growing up in a segregated South. You know, it used to be kind of simple, right? It was black folk and it was white folk. And the black folk would fight and argue with the white folk, and the white folk would fight and argue with the black folk, and things were kind of simple. But if you go into a school today, how simple is it now? What is it like, your population in the schools now?
It's quite mixed, yes.
It's quite mixed. It's Hispanic, it's Latino, it's Asian, it's black, it's white. And by the way, if you look at the demographics, the black population is basically static, not growing. White population basically static, not growing. The growth in the population is Hispanic, it's Latino, and it's Asian. See, we getting ready to be obsolete. And if you're having a discussion about the future, if you're having a discussion about education, and if the only people in the discussion are black folk and white folk, then we need to do what? Expand our understanding about what the future will really look like. Expand your comfort zone. I'm one of the best examples of someone who had to expand a comfort zone in order to be successful. Now, Todd mentioned that in 1987, I was elected the first black since Reconstruction elected to the Georgia House of Representatives from Athens, Clarke County. I'm very proud of that. But there's a backstory that I think is more important than the historical accomplishment. Now, what he didn't tell you was that I did not run for the first time in 1986. The first time I ran for the state legislature was 1982, right? I ran hard. I got my little white shirt, blue suit, red tie. I thought that was all I needed. I went out, I shook hands, da-da-da-da. Vote came in, and I lost. So 2 years later, I ran for the same seat against the same gentleman. I bought 2 red ties. I had 2 blue suits. Went around, and my parents always told me, if at first you don't succeed, what should you do again, Mr. Marr? Try again. So 2 years later, I ran again. I worked twice as hard, and guess what? Nope, lost again. And I'm like, what's wrong with these voters? You know how it is when people don't follow you? What is the first thing you do? You blame what? These some of the dumbest voters I've ever seen. Can't they see? I got my little law degree, college degree. Don't they understand that I need to be under the gold dome? No, they didn't understand that. And so I'm looking, and the second time I lost by 112 votes. And I was so frustrated. And one day in my frustration, I began to think, I was like, what can I do to get these 112 votes? So the first thing I thought about, Steve Bradshaw, man, I just need 112 more people. I need 112 more black folk. Where can I find 112 more black people? So we went out and started registering black folk. It's Georgia politics. Y'all know how we do, right? Isn't that Georgia politics? Black folk outvote the white folk outvote the black folk. We reconfigure the lines, and I found a guy passed out almost drunk on the corner, and we carried him over to the courthouse, signed him up, and it turned out to be a good deal. On election day, he was drunk, same street corner. I voted him. He didn't know he voted, but I voted him. Still wasn't enough. And then I went over to the University of Georgia. I need 112 more black people. Where can I find 112 more black people? And so I started researching the fertility rates of African-American women. My district, I needed 112 more black folk. And then I realized something. The mistake I was making, because the district I was running in was a 66% majority white district. I had only been campaigning in black churches, in African-American communities. I literally had only been asking black people to vote for me. And one day I'm sitting there, I had an epiphany. I think I'm gonna ask white people to vote for me too. It was brilliant. It was brilliant. You have problems in your county. You have problems in Liberty. You have problems in Chatham, problems in Effingham, problem. And the only people you turn to for solutions are people who look like you. And I wish I could tell y'all I did that because I had this great Martin Luther King moment. I just wanted to win. Right? Sometimes wanting to win has to be more important than your biases and your fears. So I told my sister, we're going to every neighborhood in Athens, Clarke County. We're going to ask everybody to vote for us. I'm going door to door. First day out, an elderly, well-dressed, smiling white lady came to the door. I'm standing there with my sister van, and she handed her my brochure. She was smiling, I was smiling, my sister was smiling, and she started reading it, and I'm thinking, man, I should have thought of this 2 elections ago, and I had already been in Atlanta. And then the smile turned to a frown. Then she turned it over, and that was my picture. And the frown turned to a scowl. And she literally threw the paper back at my sister. And she says, you all are wasting your time. She said, I'll never vote for one of them because they lie, they cheat, and they steal. And there's nothing you can ever do to get me to vote for one of those people. You ever been in a situation like that? My heart literally broke in my chest. I turned and walked away knowing that I'll never again come across the railroad tracks, never again leave the safety of my community, never again risk the embarrassment that I just felt. And so as I got to the street, I turned to tell my sister what I was thinking, but my sister was still on the porch talking to the white lady. And my sister was going, hold up, lady. And I'm like, we getting ready to go to jail today. And she said, excuse me, ma'am. Said, don't you know you can't judge my little brother simply by the color of his skin? Hadn't you ever heard of the civil rights movement? Don't you know what you just did is wrong? And the lady said, excuse me, but let me read that brochure one more time. She took it and she read and she said, well, let me tell you something. I don't care what color he is, I'll never vote for a damn lawyer. Oftentimes, we don't reach out. We don't build the relationships. We don't establish the alliances we need, not because of what people are thinking, it's because of what we think they might be thinking. The good Lord has made this world in a very unique way. The successes you seek in life are rarely found close by. If we want to transform Southeast Georgia, if we want to transform Chatham, if we want to transform coastal Georgia, I submit to you that you're going to have to cross philosophical, geographic, political tracks. I submit to you that if we really, really, really want to make a difference, we're going to have to recognize a new vision for Georgia, similar to the original vision for Georgia that was established by James Oglethorpe and the trustees right here as we sit and stand. I submit to you we have to embrace a new vision for Georgia. It is a vision of a Georgia not separated by black folk and white folk, not separated by North Georgia and South Georgia, not separated by rich and poor, urban, rural, suburban. A Georgia that when it comes to the education of my daughter and your children and your grandchildren, we'll be wise enough not to separate ourselves, even between Republicans and Democrats. I share with you a new vision. One great Georgia for one great people. A Georgia, a Chatham County, a Liberty County, a Glenn County, a Effingham County, that understands that we can have one Chatham, one Savannah, one Georgia, one America that is what you and I pledged it would be and what we've been pledging it would be since we were little boys and girls, that we will be one nation under God, one nation indivisible, one nation, one Chatham, one Savannah that offers liberty, justice, and economic opportunity for all. That's my vision. That's my hope. That's my prayer. Thank you.
So we have a couple minutes for questions. Do you have any questions for Michael?
Oh, I shot.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
You mean to run up? Hang on. We're going to make this real easy. I need to get my 10,000 steps.
You did good. Thank you. Not to get back on the trait, sir, but what about this idea of trustworthiness? You know, it just seems that trust used to be big, used to be, I'm going to be trustful, trust me. And now you hear here depending upon the winds are blowing, people change their mind. Why is it so difficult for us as a people to be trustworthy?
It's easy to trust people you know, right? My senior year at Clark Central High School in fall of 1970, those of you all from Georgia know what happened in the fall of 1970. That was the year we ended segregated public education, right? I was distrustful of my white classmates, and you know why? I never spent any time with white kids. You tend to distrust things and people you don't have a relationship with. One of the things I always tell leadership participants, you know, you got these phones and you got your little contact list, right? If all your contacts are black folk and you black, and if all your contacts are white folk and you white, then if you leave out of here with the same list of contacts, then you wasting your money and your time. What this is about is building networks, right? And recognizing that in order to be a leader, you can't be about or. It can't just be Republican or Democrat or black or white or conservative or liberal, right? The most powerful word in the English language, I think, is not or, but it's and, right? So what if the solution to immigration in America is a path to citizenship and a wall? Why can't we do both? What is this? What is this? What? Cell phone? Is that what it is? And what else? What else is it? A tracking device and what else? A distraction and let me tell you what it is. It's a flashlight, it's a GPS system, and it's a radio, and it's a TV, and what? And it's a camera, and it's a record player, and. The reason Apple is $1 trillion corporation is because they understood and embraced the power of and turned into $3 trillion. As leaders, we have to free ourselves from the tyranny of or and embrace the limitless power of and. It just, sometimes you have to make tough decisions, but the great majority of the time is you can create a hybrid decision that's better than the or on either side of the spectrum. One more good question. Yes, sir, way in the back. They're bringing you a microphone. Good morning. I'm good. How about yourself?
Let's turn it on.
Yeah, now it works. Thank you for being here and also letting everybody know that you were a Head Start child.
Yes.
Work at a community action agency, and I think one of the greatest things that we're listening to today is that many of us love music. And sometimes we, in our home, listen to African-American music, and then sometimes we listen to country music, but we don't let our friends know. You know, we get to moving a little bit and we forget that we love everything, and I think that what's important is that we make certain that we embrace the entire community. And your message to us today is so important that it's not black, it's not white, it's not Democrat, it's not Republican. And so talk about a little bit about your rise as a young man out of Athens, Georgia, what became of so important, made you who you are?
Well, just my parents and people who invested in me, and embracing the vision more than the tactics. We argue a lot about how to do it, and we lose sight of what it is we want to do, right? It's all about the vision. And that was just, I would put the book cover up there because I got to talk about James Oglethorpe. I spent my life researching and writing about James Oglethorpe. And Oglethorpe, in my mind, is one of the greatest 3 Georgians to ever live. One Oglethorpe, Martin Luther King, and Jimmy Carter, because he's the only Georgian ever to be elected president of the United States. But Oglethorpe was an and guy, right? He really was, and I've spent my life researching and writing about him. And so one of the things unique about James Oglethorpe that people don't fully appreciate, and the book I've written, I said that he is the first abolitionist. Now, if you were looking for the first abolitionist who fought it, would you look in Georgia in the 18th century, right? Will you be looking down here in Savannah, Georgia, for this man, James Oglethorpe? So the gentleman on the left is Diallo with the turban on, right? And prior to Oglethorpe coming here to Savannah in 1730, the gentleman on the left was captured and enslaved and brought to the colony of Maryland and enslaved on a tobacco plantation. He was educated, came from a wealthy family on the West African coast. He convinced the man who enslaved him to allow him to write a letter. And he wrote the letter not in English, but in Arabic, because he was a Muslim. And convinced the man who owned them to share this letter with other slavers who brought the letter back from Maryland 5,000 miles back to England. But no one could interpret the letter. And the letter fell in the hands of who? James Oglethorpe. So Oglethorpe was so, he wanted to know what the letter actually said. He sent it to Oxford, had it translated, and it was so impressed by what the young man had written that he paid for the young man's freedom and paid for his passage back to England. Diallo ends up in London in 1734. He meets with the king and queen. He's inducted into the Spalding Gentleman Society, helps to create the London Museum, the British Museum, and ultimately returns to his home on the west coast of Africa. What Diallo did was he introduced British citizens, whites, many of the great majority that never met an educated black African. That sets in motion a movement of British citizens who felt like now enslaving human beings, intelligent people, is morally wrong. James Oglethorpe, Georgia, the only one of the 13 original colonies where slavery was prohibited. James Oglethorpe, who embraced Tamachichi, a native Indian who was here. James Oglethorpe said that, you know, in my heart, I'm really a red man because they have rejected materialism. James Oglethorpe, Georgia, the only colony that encouraged Jewish people to come and settle here. James Oglethorpe, our historical father, recognized that all people deserve, number one, economic opportunity. All people deserve to have a place. All people should be respected. This is the vision. This is our heritage. And I argue this is who we really are. The sons and daughters of Oglethorpe, who embraced all people and recognized the dignity of all human beings. That's what this conference is about. That's who you are. That's who we are. And most importantly, that is who our founding father really was. Thank y'all.